everyone, and welcome to the very first Pivot panel. I'm Kaylee and I'm from Pivot Career Moves for Dancers. We help dancers find meaningful work off the stage. So today I'm talking with 3 dancers who have pivoted to the fitness industry. So they've gone from dancers to fitness instructors. We have Dustin Isom, Kaylee Stevens, and Sammy Douglas. So I'm just going to give a little brief intro on all of them, just so you have some background before we jump right into it. So Dustin, he's based in Las Vegas. He has danced for Norwegian Cruise Lines, in Vegas the show, and before all this pandemic stuff happened, he was also dancing as a freelance dancer in Vegas. He now works for Bar 3. He's a bar instructor and the assistant manager for Bar 3 Henderson. And he also works for Bar 3 Corporate as one of their online instructors on their online teaching platform. Kaylee, she lives between Florida, New York, and Scotland. She's danced for Holland America. She's performed the role of Cassie twice in various regional productions of A Chorus Line, obviously. Thought I'd make that clear. She's danced internationally as a showgirl and has also performed in theme parks. She started working as a fitness instructor in New York City, and now she runs her own fitness business called Travel Fit by Kaylee. Sammy, she's based in Brisbane, Australia. She's also danced on cruise lines with both Princess Cruises and Norwegian Cruise Lines. She's performed with recording artists such as the Veronicas, and also works as a local freelance dancer when we are not on lockdown. After an injury early in her career, she found Pilates and was soon after trained as a Pilates instructor in mat work and reformer Pilates. And now she runs her own fitness business, training group classes and individual clients. So honestly, these intros don't really do these dancers justice, but we'll leave it at that for now. You can find links to their website and all of their social media either in the description or somewhere on this page wherever you're watching this video. And yeah, without further ado, here is Dustin, Kaylee, and Sammy talking about how they pivoted from dance to fitness. So thanks so much, you guys, for being part of this. It's the very first one. We'll see how it goes. But I just want to get straight into it and kind of go around and kind of explain how you got involved in fitness in the first place. So I guess let's start with Sammy.
Okay, so I did contracts abroad for many years. Don't know how many, 8 years maybe. And then I was ready to just settle down in one place. And as most performers know, there's not a lot of work unless you're in, a big city like London, New York, Vegas, in terms of like contracts. So I just found that I needed to merge into something else. And I was kind of tossing up between event management and Pilates. I didn't know what avenue to take. And I don't even know what made up my mind, but Pilates helped me through an injury in dance. So I went down that avenue, dove into a course, a reformer mat work Pilates course, and then kind of had an opportunity with a couple of studios and dove into teaching Pilates, fitness, and dance. So I think it all happened really quickly, but I think I felt like I was ready to teach fitness because of the knowledge we have as performers, as dancers with our bodies. And also I'd been teaching dance on and off, my whole adult life. So, was confident in holding a room and, teaching in that way. So yeah, that's kind of how I got into it. I also met my partner, and that was another reason why I wanted to settle down, which, it's a classic old story, but it's true. And he moved over from Argentina to live in Australia as well. So we've, settled down now. And that's what got me into kind of the fitness world.
Yeah. And what about you, Dustin? What kind of propelled you to go into fitness?
Yeah, so it's funny. Sammy and my story are Very, very similar. So I did contracts abroad as well. I worked a lot on cruise ships for about not quite as long, like 4.5 years. Um, Performing. That was, so my first professional work was on ships, and that's kind of the last besides before moving to Vegas. And then on my last contract, I actually met my husband. So, well, not my husband then, but I met my husband now.
He was already my
And,
husband.
already my husband when we met. And so I knew that that was going to be my last cruise ship contract because I wanted to settle on land. And like you said, I was living in New York, and it's harder to get jobs unless you're living in a major city. And I knew I just didn't want to go back to New York. So I was actually en route to LA. And then I had a couple of friends who were like, move to Vegas. Like, there's so much work there, so much gig work, great opportunity as a transition from ships to land. So I did that, brought my boyfriend at the time, who's now my husband, over with me. And that's when he moved to America. And he was a big part of it, part of the transition into fitness as well. I knew I didn't want to go back on ships. But then after meeting him, I was like, I don't really want to do long distance. We did it my entire last contract. So I was like, I'm going to settle down now. So that's what brought me to Vegas, started performing here. And then Bar 3, I actually just kind of fell into it. So I wasn't really looking to become a fitness instructor, or really, I wasn't even looking for a next step in my career. But another dancer in the show, Erica, I think you remember her, she started teaching there about a month before me and was like, why don't you come take my class? Like, I'm teaching free community classes. So long story short, I took her class, fell in love with it, became an instructor, and then that's just now kind of become my full-time job. So I left my full-time job performing, and I still kind of freelance and gig around town, but I mainly, I teach, I work more full-time at the studio, and just kind of loving it.
That's awesome that it was quite natural for you, because I think sometimes as dancers it's quite chaotic and a bit abrupt and can be a bit more jolting. So
totally.
But it can be really natural too, which is awesome. And it's, just kind of depends.
Yeah, especially when you're not looking for it. Like me, just being 25, like I'm probably not going to stop dancing completely for a few more years, but just with the health of my body and just with the health of my body and maintaining it, I know I need to take a step back. Like, sure. I was just go for the longest time. So I think that's what made it feel more natural, because I wasn't really like struggling to try to find something else, and it just kind of, landed on my plate, and it's been great ever since.
Well, I feel like too, when it happens that way, I think it's so great that you were open to that, because it can actually help your dance career when you're not so stressed about it. Because totally. I know for me, when I was dancing full time, you're just like, oh, I didn't book that thing. I have to go to the next thing. I have to fly out here. And it's like this kind of, it's a desperate thing, I felt like. And so when you kind of have this other thing that you love in a totally different way, or it's just like fulfilling you in a different way, you're kind of less stressed about, first of all, making money, and less stressed about just everything else. And it can kind of, be more natural, which is cool.
Totally.
So Kaylee, what about you? How did you kind of get into it? I know you had some pretty crazy injuries happening, so.
Yeah, I'm sensing a theme. We still all hang out because we have very similar lives and stories, which is not a coincidence. But yes, it definitely started with an injury. I was Cassie in a chorus line. I tore my ACL doing ACL.
Ironic.
And then I was like, I started following a bunch of fitness people on Instagram at that time because I was so bored in my bed all the time. And then I remember thinking, I can do this. This is something that I can do. I work out all the time. And then I just tried to start studying for my ACE exam, and I never finished. And then but that's when like the spark kind of went off, is when I realized that I thought I was a really strong person. I thought I was really fit when I was a dancer. I was not. My quads were not strong. They were overused, not supportive of my ligaments and joints. And my hips were, I was not strengthening. So started with an injury. And then after that, it became, okay, I really need a survival job that's more profitable in New York City. And also Flybar kind of fell into my lap, which was part of Flywheel Sports. It's SoulCycle's rival. And they have a sculpting program. And a friend of mine was a Flybar instructor who was in Chorus Line. And when I returned to dancing 6 months later after my knee got better, she's like, you should really do this. It's high pay. It's great. You have the personality for it. So then I started, and then I think it became a way to protect my body from injury, obviously. But then I kept getting more injured the more I kept going back to dance contracts. Did another Chorus Line, and then I had 3 more hamstring surgeries. So I've learned that I do have a little bit of intensity issues with working out and dancing. But I don't know. Fitness, again, it kind of fell into my lap as a personality thing. It fell into my lap from doing shows and instructors telling me how great of a survival job it was for them, because I needed something flexible that, could cover the rent. And then it turned into, wow, I look forward to every class. I don't ever dread going to this job. I actually look forward to every single class. I look forward to every client. Memorizing names is easy for me. And then after Flywheel and Flybar ended, I started working for 3 other fitness studios in New York. And then I met my partner way earlier than all of that on a cruise ship as well.
Classic.
What a theme. Check us out. What about you, Kaylee?
Yeah, I think all of us.
Yeah.
Just classic.
So I kept following him to Scotland, and I was like, I need to keep this flexibility thing going, because this long distance, 2 different countries thing is really difficult. So I was like, how can I turn this into something that I can do for me? So I started filming myself on Instagram, and then the pandemic happened, and now it's taken off.
Right. So how are you guys feeling, like, with the isolation stuff? Like, do you feel like, because you kind of had this background, you're just having a different experience than a lot of other dancers? I mean, I think I know the answer, but if you kind of talk about that. Sammy, you can go ahead first.
Yeah, so for sure. I mean, we are so used to going contract to contract. We're so used to our lives shifting and going a completely different way, whether that be with our career, obviously our relationships, money, stresses, all of that. We are so used to, as performers, riding the wave and, looking at what's next and what you could do and what other skills you have that you can utilize to pivot in a certain direction. So I think with this pandemic, a lot of people went into freak out mode. We're really lucky in Australia. We were not locked down like you guys are in the States or other countries. So it wasn't as bad, but like I lost my job. I have 3 or 4 jobs and I lost them overnight. Whereas a lot of people didn't get that. And I just went into like survival, like I went into fight mode, and I just was like, okay, what can I do now that's going to earn an income, that's going to keep me happy, keep me busy, keep me moving. And yeah, it picked up, and I kept one-on-one clients, which we're allowed to do with safe distancing. And I started an online Zoom classes, daily Zoom classes, and also like an online studio, like pre-recorded workout. So I just dove into that, and it didn't feel super stressful. Obviously, like the stresses were there, but it wasn't this like, oh my God, what is happening? It just was like, okay, this is what I need to do now. And I think that is because I've done it a million times before. I've moved countries multiple times. I've jumped from one cruise ship to the next. I moved to Argentina for a while there for my partner. I've moved to London. Like, moving and changing and working out your finances and working out where you need to be is something that we as performers are more equipped to handle than someone that's in a full-time job for 5, 10, 20 years.
Yeah, absolutely. And Dustin, how is Bar 3 kind of doing isolation? Like, you're teaching classes still?
Yeah. So same as you, Sammy, we switched to the whole Zoom platform. So we've been teaching live stream classes that way. They started off just being at our homes, and I live in a very small apartment with me and my husband and our 2 dogs. So at the beginning of all this, I think like you said, like money, I wasn't too stressed because I'm used to just waiting, like not living paycheck to paycheck, but just like waiting for the next paycheck. Like, especially as a freelancer, you're just like, I don't know when the next gig will come, but I know it will, so I don't need to stress. So it wasn't like that wasn't the whole stressful thing about it. I guess it was just being on lockdown and being here and moving an in-studio job to now just my living room and losing that interaction with clients. But now we've recently moved in studio, just the instructor, still teaching live streams, but they've been very, like Bar3's just been very accommodating in this whole process. So like, I'm still, making somewhat of an income with Bar3 and, filing for unemployment and all of that, that whole situation there. But I will say, I think the biggest thing that I'm grateful for is that being at Bar3, I'm W-2. I know that 1099 and gig workers, that's been, I don't know if you know, Sammy, like 1099, it's just like a different way of being paid where you're not like taxes aren't taken out and it's just like given straight to you.
Okay.
And because you don't pay into taxes or pay into unemployment for a while, just until Saturday for Nevadans, you weren't able to collect anything. So there have been like so many freelancers who haven't gotten anything since March 15th. But I know for me,
a similar thing in Oz for a lot of people that are contractors. They're not getting any financial aid. Similar.
Yeah. So I know for me, it was like, that also was just something, a weight off my back, knowing that I am W-2 through Bar3 and that I can still collect and still receive something and I'm still teaching. So the process has just been a lot smoother than like you said, the normal 9 to 5 for the last 20 years.
Yeah. I think just from what I've seen, I think like just fitness instructors for whatever reason have just been killing it during this quarantine because you see dance teachers at BDC and at the major studios, like they're still teaching and stuff. You see all of these kind of things, but that's such a small niche, whereas fitness instructors like have been able to really capitalize on this and I think have done really well. And they're able to, it just like seems like a really good industry to be involved with if you're interested. And I think the other thing is, dancers, so many aren't on it. I mean, you could even be on Broadway at this point and you don't have a job, so that's top of the top. These people, best of the best, are freaking out essentially, or maybe not, but like everyone's kind of stressed. But I think with the fitness industry, and you're not in that, you're in like fight mode, like Sammy was saying, but you're not stressed in the same way because you still love it. You know what I mean? And I think that's a big difference, where you're not like, oh, I have to get a job doing something silly, or I'm gonna like go work at Whole Foods or something. Or not that there's anything wrong with that, but I just think it's nice when you're like, okay, I set this up before anything else happened, and now I can be so grateful that I have these skills. I have like a little bit of a platform to go off of. I'm not scrambling to figure something out now. So that's really cool, and I think that's really admirable and awesome. So Kaylee, how are you doing with your...
I'm going to piggyback on what you said and a little bit of what everyone said, but I agree. I've been seeing some Broadway performers, and like you said, the best of the best really struggle to make ends meet right now. I think fitness has always had a way of keeping me grounded as a performer and keeping me mindful of the big picture. And remembering that, like, when I don't get the job, or when I didn't have a show, or when something wasn't happening that was big in the performing world or reputable enough for me or whatever, I always had this other thing that I thrived with and that fit my personality, that filled my core and feels like a performance at times. Actually, it definitely feels like a performance every time. And I'm so grateful, and I have been grateful every day of this pandemic, realizing that and it's funny how just little things over the past few years have kind of lined up to this moment where, you know, 4 surgeries, I've been forced to live with my parents, and I'm living at my 92-year-old grandmother's house right now, because John's on the ship. He's been stuck on the ship. My fiance is stuck on the ship for much longer than we planned. We have no idea when he's going to get off. And I'm not going to go quarantine in Scotland by myself without any family members. So
Of course.
to support me emotionally, I'm just not going to do it.
Absolutely.
So I can't bear it. It's already hard enough to be away from John since February 26th. So having to adapt with surgeries and having to adapt with, I feel like I've been living out of a suitcase for 6 years. I haven't had roots. I haven't had a home. And creating something that was having to create and being forced to create a platform, even if it's just on Instagram or a website, or taking little bits and pieces from what I've learned from Flybar, what I've learned from TRX Total Body, what I've learned from dance cardio at the Women's Colony Club, like little bits and pieces from all of that and putting it on Instagram. It's so interesting just how it all came together into a Zoom class that has now supported me better than any other side job I've ever had, any other. And I'm also a VIP kid teacher. It's like an English teacher for Chinese kids. And that was kind of my go-to freelance, flexible job that I could do in Scotland and the US. And now I'm dwindling down my hours for VIP kid, and I'm hyping up my Zoom classes because they're way more fun. I wake up in the morning with a pep in my step. I get to speak to people every single day and engage, and I can carry it anywhere. And I can still, when we're allowed to travel again, I can carry it to somebody else's living room, to, you know, a family member. I just love how mobile it is, the business, you know?
Yeah, definitely. I think with everything that's happened, like, you obviously couldn't have predicted this, and no one could have. And it's not to say that, like, oh, you should have done this, you know. It's like, that's not it at all. It just so happens that, oh wow, this actually is really, like you said, mobile and really stable and just kind of practical in that way. So yeah, I think that's awesome. I want to talk about some of the skills you learned from your dance career that have really transferred to fitness. I know you've each kind of talked about, like, it's a performance and you kind of have to have a certain personality for it. But what kind of skills have you noticed, like, oh wow, that really helps me in this industry? So we'll start with Sammy again.
Okay. Yeah, like Kaylee mentioned, performing like that, I think it feeds that performance need that we've all grown up with since we were little, right? So, you know, say you have an early morning class and you're tired like like everyone else there, and it's probably cold that morning and whatever, but, you know, the minute the class starts, you are on show in some way because it's your job to bring them energy, to energize them. So I think that's probably the biggest thing. The knowledge, which I touched on before, the knowledge of the body. Like I feel like most dancers that have gone into fitness, or most dancers full stop, have been injured in some way, however great or small. So having that knowledge of the body, having that knowledge of, like, how to feed your body with good foods to perform well in whatever sport or thing you're doing during your day. I think just having that background is super beneficial. And also being able to communicate effectively. There's just like all these, I mean, I could think of 100 things that we, as a dancer, you're not just dancing around on a stage. I mean, we are, but you have all these skills that are ingrained in you since you're a child. So, you know, I think communication is huge, like, especially in Pilates, it's mindful movement. So it's like cueing, and, you know, you might explain something one way to one person. They go, oh yeah, I get it. But then this person doesn't get it at all. So, you know, finding different ways to communicate the same point. I don't know. There's a few things that I think, you know, really correlate and are really transferred over well.
Dustin, do you have any others that you were maybe surprised by, and like, oh, I didn't realize that this is such a
a skill that I have from dance that really translates?
Yeah, so I think, well, my first one, which I realized right off the bat, and it's less dance and more like, well, performing on cruise ships, is just having people skills. Like, and like being able to start up a conversation with a brand new client that you've never met before. But I feel like I just gained that skill from working on cruise ships and doing cruise staff duties and all those things where you just have to talk to people and be on all the time. But another thing that I realized or recognized just recently after becoming more of like an online instructor for Bar 3 is like we learn so much choreography and have so much in our brains. And there have been times where I've had to fly up to corporate and film like 4 different workouts. And like other instructors will be like, how do you keep all those in your mind? And it's like, well, to me, it's not, I mean, it's not choreography, but it is. Like I have a set playlist and like this move goes with like this phrase of music. And that's how I memorize all of my classes. Like I can keep like 3 or 4 classes in my brain. And I honestly think it's just because I was a dancer and I'm used to keeping so many numbers in my mind and, you know, spacing and blocking and everything. So, and I just realized that recently. So I think that's like the biggest thing that I've taken from my dance career to now instructing.
I love that. That's awesome because it's so true. Like people are surprised all the time. Like, how do you remember a 45-minute show? And for us, it's just, I don't know, it's just a thing you do.
It's just, it's just what we've done.
Like, I actually don't know. I don't know how I know that this is my number today. Or
and even on cruise ships, like you do like not just one show, you do like 3 or 4 different shows. Plus you have like little numbers
reblock
around the ship and reblocks and like there's so much that goes on to our brain and we don't even really think about it. But then when you go into a class and it's like, okay, let me click this playlist and like that whole class just pops up in my head. And it's like, okay, this is what comes next. Even if I don't have my notebook with like my notes and, you know, the set choreography out in front of me, I still just know it. So it's crazy.
Kaylee, do you feel that way as well?
Yeah, I want to say ditto to everything he's saying. I'm just like, yep, yes. I was trained musically with Flybar. Flywheel is all about the music. It's all about you got to finish the exercise on that last 4, 3, 2, you're done. If you don't, you got in trouble.
Wow.
Same at Bar 3. Bar 3 is very like musicality.
Yeah, it's all about the music. It's all about exercise with the music. And when we were in training, I remember for those who weren't dancers, they just had the hardest time. Like, okay, try to hear an 8, and this beat would come on, and I'd be like, 8, 6, 4, 3, 2, and so many people can't find the 8. It's shocking because they'll be like 8. But I'm always, and people are now shocked. So I was socially distant, hanging out with friends. Just have to clarify the other day. And I put a song on and I was like, okay, they're like, how do you know when the song is ending? I'm like, well, 2 counts of 8 or is either, so it's like 20 seconds is usually either 1 long count of 8 or 2 fast counts of 8, usually. So if I look at my Spotify playlist and I see 20 seconds, even if I don't know the song very well, I can tell when it's ending at this point. And I'll be like, this is a slow 8. You've got 7. Anyway, you can't do any of that without being a dancer, without that inborn, like, young kid training. And I think that adds, and again, to backpack on what these wonderful people have said, like the client relationships, the choreography in the back of the brain. My sister's always like, how do you come up with new content so quickly? Like, do you rehearse it? I'm like, not really. I want to tell you that I rehearse it, but I don't. I think of a move like maybe right before a class and I know where to put it, but again, just keeping that storage in the back, those moves and new ways to do that same exact series. Yeah. How many different ways can we do tabletop glutes? Okay, let's think of 1,000. You know, so it's super interesting. And I really don't think non-dancer trainers have, I mean, maybe they do. Maybe I'm not giving them enough
I know we always are like, well, dancers are just the best. So
we're all dancers, so let's just keep it at that.
Yeah.
And to add on that, like the creativity, like you said, like you know, throwing myself under a little bit of a bus here, but like I can go into a class and have prepared nothing and it's still a good class. And,
Same.
you know, I can trust myself that that will happen, and I cannot know what moves next, but I just trust that I'll come up with it and it will be fine. And as you said, creating 100 different ways to do the same thing is, you know, people go to workshop after workshop to learn that, but I think it comes to us really naturally.
And you're confident when you say it.
Yes, and so helpful. And then the performer in us is like, okay, we're doing this next, you know? Yeah. Yeah.
The performer in us keeps like a smile on our face in their head. It's like, oh shoot, what's going on?
Shit, what's
okay,
next?
I'll figure it out.
What do I do now? Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Totally. So kind of speaking of dance, just in my exploration of the whole career transition and pivot and everything, and even my own experiences with you know, trying to find my way to a more stable thing, or whatever you want to call it. I want to know, like, did you feel supported by the dance community when you were transitioning? So like, did you feel like when maybe if you were in a cast and you were kind of talking about it, I don't know, maybe Dustin, just because it's you were in a cast at the time when you were kind of transitioning, like, did you feel supported, or was it just kind of not really a bother, or was it, you know, do you know what I'm trying to say? Like, do you feel like you were supported by fellow dancers, or was it just kind of like, oh, well, yeah, you just want to settle down? Like, that's kind of how I felt, is I felt like, oh, you're giving up, cool, like, just kind of like these weird vibes. I just want to know if any of you have experienced that from the dance community.
Yeah, well, I think for me, like, since I started Bar 3 so everything started at once. I moved to Vegas in January of 2017, started Vegas a show in February, and then was introduced to Bar 3 like end of March and became certified in May. So like, I was still very much a full-time performer, and there was another dancer in our cast who was also teaching there. So yeah, I would say it was accepted, because even for myself, I didn't look at it as like a pivot in my career. But I would say when I decided I dropped down from full-time to part-time January of last year, and then I finished out till October as part-time, knowing that I'd be more full-time at Bar 3. And I feel like it was then when people were like, well, what are you going to do next? Like, is Bar 3 going to pay the bills? Like, how are you going to survive going from, you know, dancing this many times a week to just teaching this? And I'm like, I think just the mentality of going from one contract to the next, I was like, well, it'll work out in the end. And everything always happens for a reason. And I just know this is my next step. And so there was definitely a lot of doubt. And I don't know if it was because, like, you know, we were all so close to the cast, so maybe they were just like, we don't want you to go, like, we love having you here.
Well, yeah, I can speak from experience that is an amazing cast there. Like, it's an amazing cast over at Vegas, the show. Like, nothing against them, but there definitely would be a bit more like, wait, what are you actually doing? Because that's how I left my contract mid-contract to try to pursue something else, like be in the relationship I'm in now and move to Australia and all this stuff. So, and there was definitely like, oh wait, like, are you okay? Like, which fair, like, you care, but yeah.
But it was like, little did any of them know that I was offered assistant manager at my current studio / I was hired as an online instructor for corporate. So like, I had a lot of things lined up, but like, it's just, you know, it's just
no one's really
that
gonna
everyone
understand.
Has as a dancer, you know?
Yeah. And you're on your own path, so, but people are just like, I think it's confronting to them as well, because if they're like, oh, well, they're thinking about this other thing, like, maybe I should be thinking about it, but I kind of don't want to because I want to, you know? I don't know.
Yeah. So I think, like, I think there's just a time for everything. And I just knew it was my time to take a step back. And I kind of looked at it as, I'll just give it a year of just not full-time performing, because I've done that for the last like 6 or so years. So let me just take a step back for 1 year even and see what this like road will lead me down. And I look at it now as like one of the best decisions ever. And like, maybe it'll be just a year or maybe more than a year. I kind of enjoy teaching full time and freelancing, and I'm kind of getting the best of both worlds. So like, it was just, everything just ended up working out. And like at the end of the day, like I have, you know, people from the cast like coming to take my class and showing up to my live streams and really supporting me now, because as dancers, we all kind of have that fear, like what's going to happen with them? Like this is all they know. And I'm sure if someone in the cast was doing the same, I'd probably have the same reaction. But
yeah, totally. And we can all probably relate to feeling that way, where you're like, no, of course I want to be full-time dancing only. Like that's how I see myself. Like, and that's, I think, like you said, like, I think that is okay for a time. And there is a period where you kind of have to do that in a way. But yeah, there's kind of a time when you know that, okay, I'm ready to do some experimenting, let's say. Kaylee, I saw you nodding your head in agreement. What are your thoughts?
No, I think when I left the fitness stuff, dancers all came to my practice classes, to be fair. I was like trying to think more about it when we were talking about it. I was like, oh, actually, no, a lot of my dancer friends came to my practice classes when I was training, and they were very supportive. I think that as it became more of a bigger thing, fitness in my life, it was kind of like I think you're transitioning out. But it was also because, again, I kept having these major, my hamstring tendons tearing off the bone. So like there was more to it than that. But I just hated that feeling of like, no, I'm still going to dance. Watch me. Like broken hamstrings and all. I will be at least 2 shows a year for my heart. Whether they're in my hometown or whatever, you know, the regional theaters that I can still get jobs in, maybe Germany now and then, who knows, like we did before. But I was like, actually, Kaylee, they were very supportive in the beginning, and they came to all my practice classes, and they were very supportive of my survival job hustle. But I definitely dropped out of auditions. I just could not do the auditions with all of my classes, especially at my 6 a.m. classes, commuting for 45 minutes to an hour on the other side of Manhattan, and then teaching 2 classes and then having to go to an audition. I just couldn't do it. I just remember feeling really swollen all the time and really tired and really cranky. I was also mid-20s and I wasn't eating well and things like that. But, I think there's a mix, and it's probably up here where I feel more insecure about the transition myself, when really everyone's pretty cool with it.
Yeah, I can relate to that 100%, that it's mostly just me fighting with myself. Where it's like this identity crisis that like no one actually cares, but it's like, if anything, they're worried, like, are you okay? Because essentially you're not, but it's like you're just trying to figure it out. And for the longest time I was trying to like prove something to myself with dance, like, oh yeah, I can book these big jobs, or oh, I can do this or that. And it's like, well, I don't really have to prove anything to myself. I can instead just be proud of what I did accomplish, and then maybe there's more to life than this.
Yeah, ego, right? Just like the ego. Like I can't go anywhere past 90 degrees on my bad leg now, and it's such an ego thing, because I used to, hit my face. And it's so frustrating to watch other people go deep into a stretch when I really miss that feeling. Or I think it's just an identity loss, like what you're saying. It's just kind of dealing with a little bit of an identity, not loss, but shift. Yeah. Let me rephrase that. Shift.
Yeah, you're still a dancer. Like you still have it all. Like you haven't actually lost anything. It's just there's more to explore about yourself, and there's other things you might be interested in or good at or whatever. And that's exciting to explore instead of, kind of holding yourself back from that. Sammy, did you notice any opinions from
I was
dance?
trying to think, when I've always been like one of those like A-type personalities, like go, and like when I did a bunch of cruise ships, I think after like 2 contracts I was like, there's a lot of free time here, there's a lot of partying that goes on, a lot of like wasted time. And so I started a nutrition degree online, And I was like, I'll do that in my spare time on board. And number one, it was tricky because it's online and cruise ship internet is not great. But number two was I probably wasn't supported in terms of friends I'd be like, no, I'm going to stay in and study. And they're like, no, come out, do this, do this, do this. I'm like, no, I really need to get this done. But in the beginning I was good. And then by the end of the contract, I didn't even look at my study. It just went away. So what happened was I came home and I took 6 months to get through 2 years worth of study, and I just put my head down and like got it done. So in that way, I wasn't supported, and I think I was the only one in that particular cast. Actually, it was 2 contracts that I did that had thought about what might be next. And I didn't even know what was next, but I had lots of like tummy issues and stuff. So I knew I was interested in nutrition and like how to heal yourself that way. So in that way, I wasn't supported. But then I think when I wanted to settle down in one place and find stuff, it was more fighting with myself. As you guys said, like, I was like, I'll still do contracts, like I'll still audition and I'll still do more local things, or even a contract abroad, but just not a long one, like maybe 3-month stint and whatever. And if I do this fitness thing, then I can still do that. And for a year or two, I did a couple of, maybe over 18 months, I did 2 or 3 land-based shows, which was cool because it fed that part of me. But then I remember, and they were just short shows, like a couple of weeks. And I remember like doing the shows and like my body killing me. Like I had huge whiplash through my shoulders. I also had tendinopathy in my hamstring tendon. So I can relate. Haven't had surgery, but I can definitely relate to that injury, which I still struggle with now, right? It'll always be there. And just feeling broken, but also, and also being like, oh, another show. Like, you know, that feeling of like, you love it, but it's still like any job you show up to sometimes and you're like, oh, okay, like mental game, let's do this. You know, it's that extra little push. Sometimes it's tricky and going far out. Like maybe this isn't all that I build it up in my head, and this isn't my full identity anymore. So that transition to, and this is over the past couple of years, that transition to me being more fussy with what auditions I take. So I used to be every audition, even if I didn't want the job, if it was something I just didn't even want, I was there just for the practice and the experience and just to put my face out there to be known. But I got fussier, and then every audition that rolled in, I'd be like, nah, I have to get up early for work. Don't want to travel an hour to get there. I don't want to have a full face of makeup and then go teach fitness, and just feeling exhausted and having so much on my plate. So I think the auditions dwindled off. And then recently, just before the COVID-19 shutdown, I had another kind of identity moment of being like, oh, I think I was just feeling really worn out I'm dance teaching, I'm dance gigging, I'm teaching Pilates, I'm teaching fitness. I teach at 3 studios. Like I was managing one of those studios. So I was spreading myself very thin. And before that, I was like, I need to think, maybe I miss dancing. You know, I wasn't gigging much. Maybe I need to tap back into that. And I did a few auditions, and it was really fun actually. Like a few dance auditions. I was like, oh, okay, I still can dance. You know, I am still good at this. Like, you know, and then the COVID-19 shut down, the studios all shut down. And I've actually decided not to go back to the place that I was managing just because of fatigue. Like I was just running myself into the ground. And like you said, Kaylee, like the online platform has lifted during this, and hopefully people stay wanting to do that when everything does go back, finding that, you know, it is better for them with their work schedules. They like the flexibility, they like working out from home. So kind of chasing that wave and I don't know, I kind of went on tangent there, but
some people on Instagram, and it was 86% want to continue because of the convenience.
There you go. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
so,
a lot of my
it's like
clients are going to continue.
Yeah, like bar three, we are figuring out ways of still live streaming our in-studio classes even when we open, because like we sent out a survey and so many people were like, I either feel more comfortable just not being in a group setting but still getting the same workout, or they just like the convenience of it. Like, oh shoot, I'm not gonna make it to the studio in 20 minutes, but I can just live stream it from home and not have to worry about the stress or leave my kids or, you know, big convenience.
Yeah.
It's funny about like, I want to say maybe like 6 months ago when I first started like teaching online classes, I was like, quality digital content is gonna take over. Like between the Peloton rolling out and like so many online platforms, this is gonna be a big booming industry. And I feel like it wasn't. Like, I mean, there were obviously like DVDs people bought and like, you know, home workouts always existed. But like ever since the rollout of those big brands like Peloton, and there's so many apps now where you can do fitness, like the Nike Pro app and just so much. And I'm just like digital content, quality digital content is just going to be booming. And this whole pandemic kind of proved that, because we're the one like major industry still going strong and still being able to teach and have our jobs and deliver clients what they want. And I feel like after this, it's just going to continue, going to keep rising.
I hope that someone creates an app that's a little bit better than Zoom.
Yes.
I was going to say the real thing is that Zoom is taking over, but it's like, it's a little clunky still. Like it's interesting.
I know. Because, well, Sammy, you were saying that you recorded your classes. So you noticed like the time, like the delay between your voice and like the music and your body. And it's like, just move. Guys, just
do it.
Find a beat and move to it.
Well,
like we're all in this together.
Yeah, I still
teach together.
I teach dance at a dance studio, and I find with fitness, Pilates, doesn't matter as much, but teaching dance, it's awful because they're number one, they're kids, so keeping their attention is harder. You know, the adults that take your class, they want to be there, they're going to do it in some capacity. Kids, you know, they'll just be like, oh no, and they walk out of the screen. Or then you're trying to do choreography and they're just like popcorn across your screen, and then you're like, come on, Kaylee, get in time, but you don't know if it's her, if it's the internet. You just go, yep, keep going, guys. Just keep going.
Yeah, I teach dance too to younger ones as well, and that's the same thing. Especially when you audio share through Zoom, there's a little bit of a delay, and they're like, Miss Kaylee, you're not. Which word are you on? And I said, you know what word that was on. We're dancing to all that jazz.
Yeah. All that.
And all that jazz, boom, that's when it's on.
Yeah.
But just because on your screen, I'm going 3 seconds earlier or later, I always have to say in the beginning of class, remember, I am either going to be delayed or early.
Yeah, for sure.
I feel for the dance teachers at this time. Like, I'm sure, like, I'm
about to head to 5 hours tomorrow, back to back of dance teaching. So that's definitely, that's challenging. I'm happy to get them back in the studio, but the fitness stuff online, I enjoy more so. It's just less stress. It's easier.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, obviously this pandemic is going to change so many things, and it's just interesting how much you can really reflect on things. And even Sammy, it's interesting when you said, you know, that you were kind of, it's like, and I've been through the same thing where it's like, I'm kind of burnt out because right now I'm freelance writing, which I enjoy most of the time, but like when I'm not enjoying it, it's so easy I'm really susceptible to be like, oh, maybe I just missed dance. Like you said, like, maybe I'm meant to be still dancing and like, this is all wrong. You know, I'm just susceptible to being like, I always enjoyed dancing. It's like kind of that, you're just messing with yourself. Whereas like, no, there were plenty of times that it was hard for me to like, I wasn't always enjoying it. Like there's plenty of things about the dance world that I didn't enjoy. So it's like, you can also remember those things. You know, when things are hard and what you're doing now. So, but that's interesting. And I think this time is definitely going to be interesting for people who are still full on in the dance world. And I'm hoping with Pivot that they'll be a little bit more open-minded, hopefully, towards you know, maybe there's more, you know, that you can explore. But the other thing I wanted to ask, just because I'm not sure what the go is in the fitness industry, like, do you ever worry about the longevity of a fitness career? Because, like, is there anything about, like, can you still do it, you know, when you're 50? You know what I mean? Like, not that I don't really think the world works that way anymore, you know, with how fast things change. Like, I actually think it's better to, you know, your skills are kind of shifting from tangible things to, like, critical thinking and emotional intelligence and knowing how to deal with your mental health, you know, and having those tools are essentially better work skills these days, just because I think our generation is going to have to pivot, you know, a bunch of times in any industry. You know what I mean? You're either pivoting to online or you're pivoting to something that's just your industry's gone now, you know. Who knows? Like, it's getting kind of crazy there with technology. But I was just wondering, like, if you've thought about that with the fitness industry, like, just like dance, like, does it have, like, kind of a short lifespan? And just your thoughts.
I think about it, you know, 29 and I want children. So I think about it in a way that it's not, you know, full-time job with maternity cover. So I think about it, that's what's in the forefront of my mind now. Because, like, in a few years, I want to have children. So it's like, well, there's no support like as a dancer in that way. So it's like, for me, I'm trying to shift my focus into, like, how can I build residual income through this? So maybe that's creating an online platform. So in that way, yeah. And also in terms of your body, again, we're relying on our body to earn us money. And that's always a little bit scary. However, I think in fitness, as opposed to dance, it's more supported. Like, we can tailor how high you kick your leg, whereas in dance, you can't. You got to whack it up there whether you're in agony or not. And then the other thing is...
Sorry, there's a fly and anyway, go on.
The other thing, though, is fitness will always be there. People will always want to move and work out in some capacity. So it will be there. It's just finding how to make that work for you at whatever stage you are in life.
Dustin, have you thought about that at all, or do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so kind of similar. I mean, we all teach, like, either Pilates or bar, like, low impact workouts. So for me, and Sammy, you were saying this earlier, like, it kind of, like, nursed my body back to health almost. Like, when I stopped dancing and taught more, like, I used to come home and, like, my hips were, like, so, like, in so much pain, and, like, my low back or, like, my ankles, like, random parts, and my husband just didn't understand, like, why I kept putting myself through this. And I'm like, it's just who I am, okay?
Right.
But I know, like, through teaching, because when I was teaching and dancing and would suffer, like, minor injuries, like, even though I was out of the show, I could still teach, because at the end of the day, I'm teaching a low impact workout that's built around, like, bringing bodies back to health. So, like, the basics behind Pilates and bar are all, like, moves that usually a physical therapist would recommend that you do. So I found that, yeah, I can't bend and touch my toes right now because my low back will, like, fail on me, but I can still teach and I can modify and I can still show people what they should be, or tell people what they should be doing without actually having to show people. Whereas in a show, like, you either kick your leg or you're just, like, not in the show.
Full out, no marking.
Full out.
You are partnering, flipping everywhere. Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, I see just way more, like, longevity within this career than I saw in dance, just because of what I've already witnessed through that transition phase of, like, still getting injured, not being able to perform, but I can still teach. And I still kind of have that to fall on. And now, like, you know, I come home and I feel great. Like, my hips are not in pain. My low back is not in pain. And I taught, like, 10 classes this week, but the toll on my body is not even, like, you can't even compare it to even performing 6 shows a week back when I was part-time at Vegas the show. So I see it being something, like, for me, this pivot has worked out to be something that I can see myself doing for some time. And now, like, being hired like being the assistant manager, and I also kind of, control social media and plan events for our local studio, and I film digital content for corporate. Like, I think I'm one of the youngest trainers that work for corporate. So seeing kind of everyone else there, I'm like, I have something to look forward to. Like, I can do this for a while because I'm seeing it be done right in front of me. Whereas dance, you just have that stigma where it's like, well, what are you going to do now? Because you won't be able to do this forever. And all that's just gone now, which is good.
Kaylee, what about you? Do you have thoughts?
Yeah, I'm definitely a mix of both of you. I'm also 29 and want to have babies soon. And my 2 wedding receptions got postponed because of COVID. But we'll figure that out. And I still can't get my visa, and I can't live in Scotland for longer than a certain period of time, and I can't live in my apartment, and I can't work over there, and yada yada yada. But that's not the point.
That's a different conversation that we could probably all relate to with visas.
But I agree that teaching 10 classes a week feels different than rehearsing chorus line and whatever, all those heavy chorus shows that I was in, or even a showgirl show. Like, I just feel a lot better teaching that many classes. However, group fitness, because of my personality and because of my clear intensity with, injuries and prone to risk to injuries, I push a very intense class. And even when I was teaching bar, I was still just demoing too much. Like, I need to get out of it faster. I don't need to do so much of it. I got better. I got better over the years of getting out of the exercise, but every part of me just, especially virtually, I don't know if you two agree, I feel like if I stop demoing, they just stop. So I have to just keep going, especially on Zoom. And lately I've been doing a lot more dance cardio and jumping, which is definitely not low impact, and I'm feeling the repercussions of that. Group fitness to me, and fitness in general, I agree with Sammy in the way that I do want benefits and I do want maternity leave, and I do want, luckily the UK is really good about that stuff. I do want some sort of better, and I also just want to have consistent income, and I know it's the same number for a couple of weeks. I've never seen the same number ever come in per week, which is, and people always ask me why I have such a hard time with budgeting, and that would be why, because I don't know how to work with a number that's not ever the same. So I want the benefits, and I want to find something a little bit more sturdy in that way to start a family, but I also love fitness so much that I can't seem to let it go. And I'm like, how can I, use the creative parts of this to hang on to it? Maybe it's just reducing my group class. And I really love group classes a lot more than one-on-ones because of that performance effect. But I know that personal training, especially in places like where I'm originally from, my hometown, Naples, Florida, personal training, if you get a personal training job, you're like set. If you find some good clients, you can take that and run with it. So I've thought maybe I should open a studio. My dad's a commercial realtor. I could open a studio here in Naples. But again, 4 surgeries later, I'm only 8 months post-op and my hamstring hurts, and I'm not doing that much to it, and it hurts. And my tendinopathy is still not quite gone. I still have scar tissue wrapping around the nerve, and I don't know why it keeps coming back on the nerve. So I need to find a way to keep fitness in my life, but also find something else that's that's going to have the benefits, and that's not going to keep putting me back on the operating table.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I think it goes back to like what I've been thinking with just having an open mind about it, and like not being afraid to, like, if you have to switch something up, then just, take it one step at a time, and try not to get into that like desperation mode, because I find I make pretty poor decisions when I'm just like scared or when I'm feeling desperate. You're just going to cling to the very first thing. So there's a lot to it. And, but I just find it so interesting. And even with Dustin, like, I think from my perspective, you're nailing it pretty well. So it's awesome that, cause Bar 3 is more of a corporation type thing, and you are an employee, and seems like you're, exposed to all these different avenues you can go within fitness. And that's the same for dance as well. You could do dance administration, and, you know, there's so much to it, like scheduling and managing. All those are really amazing skills to have. But yeah, just kind of like being open to the shift and seeing where it goes. But yeah, I think we'll wrap it up there. I don't want to take up too much of your time, but that was awesome, guys. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
I'm glad we got to do this. We have so much in common that great to hear all of your perspectives.
Much in common.
Yeah.
I've never heard someone say that they have hamstring tendinopathy and then they pronounced it all right. Sammy, I was like,
yeah. Is your joint up in like the sitting bone or inside?
The ischial, the ischial. They put some nails up in there. It like fully tore off, and then also wrapped around the nerve 3 times. And I undid the other 2 surgeries kicking. So.
Gosh.
Yeah,
oh man. I did my second contract. I was 20, like fresh, and it was like a ponche whack. It was like bam, it just went, and I was like, oh, okay. And then because I was so young, I was so scared to be like, I need time off. You know, my dance captain was like, you know, if you need to be taken out of shows, you get sent home. And I was like, no. And I just didn't give it time to heal, and so I just dealt with it for so long. And then a friend taught Pilates on a contract, and my body was like, I was doing aerial as well as dancing. And I just did like 3 bar Pilates style classes with her a week. And my body was like strong. And I was like, there's something in this. Why do I feel so good? I'm the oldest I've ever been. I've got the most injuries. I'm doing aerial, which was hardcore, and dancing, and I was okay. So
you don't have sitting pain anymore. You're good.
Not sitting pain, not unless I'm on like a flight, really cold, like very rarely, but sitting on it. But I was in pain for years sitting. Yeah, that was probably the worst part of it. Now it's just stretching. So like when I take my kids through stretching in dance, you know, splits and leg mounts and all of those things, if I do too much of it, it's so aggravated. And the other challenging thing, which I'm sure you're facing, is I needed to do hamstring strengthening work, but I would avoid it because it hurt.
It hurts.
So and in the beginning, the exercises were like weighted deadlifts, you know, and then I realized you can do hamstring stuff like on a reformer, and that is much kinder, and so just things like that. But I've never met anyone with it either, and the fact that yours tore off, like,
that's so funny.
I know how much pain I went through. I can't imagine what you went through, what you are going through still.
Wait, so both of you are in Australia and Dustin's in Vegas.
And where are you? Are you in?
I'm in Naples. Well, I'm in Bonita Springs, Florida at the moment.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. That was great, guys. Thanks so much. I feel like people are going to get a lot out of that. I did. That was fun.
Yeah, it was fun.
I know. It was so great hearing, like, relating to other performers. And it's like, you're not alone. All the dancers watching this, like, here's 4 great examples that
you can do it.
And you can look forward to. Because I know, like, I spent weeks before my closing night, like, crying to my husband. Like, what am I going to do? Like, this is all I've done. But I look at that and I'm like, what was I doing? But you have to go through that to realize it's a good next step. you have to go through that to realize it's a good next step.
Yes. Guys, guess what movie I was watching before we talked?
What is that?
Every Little Step. Anyone?
Every Little Step.
Yes.
I haven't seen it.
I've
but I also haven't seen
ago.
like any movie. Like, I'm so bad with movies, like, I really can't be trusted. But I'll get on it.
Maybe.
Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned a little something from that. If you did, please share it with somebody else who you think might benefit. I know that these kind of conversations aren't happening so often in the dance world, so if you want to have these conversations, please share it with somebody that you think would benefit. Also, check out our website. It's pivotfordancers.com. We have a ton of resources over there, other interviews. We're going to be doing more of these pivot panels, so stay tuned for that. Go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube channel, And yeah, we'll see you next time. Thanks so much. Oh, and thanks again to our panelists, Dustin, Kaylee, and Sammy. I loved talking to you guys. So yeah, thanks so much again. We'll see you next time.